Hello, hello, hello there. Let me welcome you to this presentation of Mango Tree Dialogues, another of our episodes regarding matters pertaining to what is happening both in the Jamaican diaspora and the United States of America, and certainly internationally. I'm very happy that you have been able to join me because, I know that you have many other venues that you could be engaged with. And in that you take the time out to even listen to this broadcast is for me a matter for which I am very grateful. All right, you know the drill. Even if you're not watching this live and you pick it up on the channel Mango Tree Dialogues, you can go ahead and like the program and subscribe. Like in real estate, location, location, location. In these YouTube channels, in terms of the algorithms and all that sort of thing. It is all about subscription, subscription, subscription. But I need not say, all of you are very savvy with what that is all about. Anyway, let me get to the thing that is on my mind. And of course, before I do so, let me again say that we are living in very, very hot times. And July, I am sure when the studies have been done for this year, that this July 2025 will prove to be one of the hottest months in recorded from we have been recording these statistics. And I'm pretty sure it's going to exceed last year's because there is so much heat out there to tell you the truth. I mean, you start out in the garden and by 9, if you don't get out there by 6 o'clock to do any respectable piece of work, by 9 o'clock you have to be out of it, unless you are a sucker for punishment and you stay out there and endure the heat. And certainly in the evening, it is very late evening, almost when it's beginning to get dark, because even then the temperature could be at around 70 odd. So, a word to the wise, again, I urge you to keep hydrated. Don't wait until you get thirsty to drink water. Keep yourself, hydrated, your favorite fluids, whatever. But we'll get through this. And we neither, we are not creators of the earth and all that therein is. And I am very confident that my creator, in whom I have great faith and confidence, will not allow us to bear more than we can. But we must play our part and not take his ingenuity, innovation, and love for us for granted. We must do our part. And one of the ways in which I do my part, I plant a lot of trees. I just love to see trees grow. And I've said before on this channel that you come to my house, it's like a jungle. People come and say, oh, it's a jungle. Yeah. But many people will be coming to that jungle if we continue this kind of heating of the planet. It's the drill, baby, drill, and all this kind of nonsense. I'm thinking that we can drill our way into prosperity while we are really putting ourselves into very serious existential jeopardy. Anyway, I don't want to get started on that. So let me get to the main matter that I want to talk to you about today. And it has to do with the celebration, and I put that in quotation marks, the celebration of the 249th independence anniversary, American independence anniversary, that was observed on July 4th. Yes, I acknowledge that this is a belated commentary, but nonetheless, very relevant in terms of what the event indicated and where I think we ought to be concentrating our thoughts as a country that is supposed to have a tremendous distinction as the leading country we say that America is the only remaining superpower. I think that there are many who would question that now. There might have been a time when it could have been so described, but in the present iteration of American life and its relationship to the world and what is happening internally, so much resembling what perhaps took place in Rome when Rome deteriorated and collapsed on itself. I'm not sure whether that status is still can still be sustained. But anyway, so be it. I must admit, my brothers and sisters, yes, I call you brothers and sisters. Every single one of you are my brothers and my sisters. We might not have come from the same parents, but we're from the same God. And I might not have met you yet, and I don't have to meet you to know that you are. But anyway, that's another thing. I don't want to digress. But when the day rolled around, July 4th, my wife, as she usually does, wished me happy 4th. And I hesitated, and to tell you the truth, I could not respond commensurately with her well-intended comment in wishing me a happy 4th. And I hesitated. And I don't think that the response, that my hesitation and my response resonated too well with her, understandably, because she meant well. But there have been things that have been going through my mind about what is happening in America. To wonder whether to put a question mark over whether I could regard the July 4th as a happy celebration. That's where I stood. The easiest thing would have been just to respond and say, happy 4th, my darling, and, let it ride. But as it turned out, the day passed and we celebrated, yes, regarding the day, the historicity of the occasion, because when you really look at it, this is the 249th celebration. We're just 1 year away from the 250th celebration, which should be something to really celebrate in terms of the independence of America. I suspect, and when I looked at the way in which July 4th was observed, let me put it that way, throughout the country, it seemed to me to have been a very muted celebration. That somehow people did not feel a sense of elation or in a celebratory mood when the day dawned, which is quite a contrast to other celebrations in the past, when people would be really out there. Yes, it was a national holiday, and as all national holidays, when people get the chance, especially in a hot July month, they're going to exhale as best as they can. But this idea of remembering America for what it is and what it can be, and all these lofty speeches and lofty observances, I don't know, probably I'm not seeing too well, but I didn't see a lot of that taking place throughout the country. I saw a kind of muted response. Let me put it no stronger than that to this day. And so you wonder what is happening in America. Why is it, let me speak for myself, why is it that I could not really bring myself to think that we are celebrating or giving thanks and for what is happening? The final coffin in the nail for me, and the great insult that helped me to really not see the day as one to be in a celebratory mood about, was that on that very day, the President of the United States, after having harassed his Republican folks in the Congress, you can bet, threaten perhaps, and push them in any way, in any event, to come through with what he described as this big, beautiful bill. This big, beautiful bill. He had a timeline, because he wanted the bill to be rushed through the Congress in the way in which it was done, and for it to be prepared and ready for his signing on July 4. And to tell you the truth, in that he succeeded in what he desired, because he did pass the bill and it did end up on his desk and he did sign it on July 4. But in that he was able to do that, said to me and gave me a deeper insight into what is wrong with America at this time, and reinforced my own thinking why this kind of elation and celebration was not possible. If anything, the day called for one of sober reflection on where the country is, and a sober appreciation of what ought to be done as it moves forward into into whatever future is there for it. That is how I saw the day, that it was more one that in which we must take stock. We have come to an inflection point in the history of our country, and that this 249th anniversary was an opportunity for us to take stock and realize that the country is not the country that perhaps was there about 2-3 years ago, but that the country faces very serious existential dangers. And that this bill, this big, beautiful bill, was an epitome of what America has moved into, and an indication of what it can become. One doesn't have to be partisan to have these thoughts. If you love the country at all, if there is any ounce of patriotism in you, any gram or smidgen of patriotism flowing through your veins, you've got to be concerned. Because on this day, when they saw it as a kind of, when the Republican Party saw it as a kind of liberation day, what the president signed was a bill which I have described. They say it's a big, beautiful bill, but I have described it as being as ugly as a frog with dentures. So I don't have a picture to show you a frog with dentures, but you can use your creative imagination and see how beautiful that creature would be. Because what this bill did was to ensure that a lot of poor and vulnerable people in this country would lose their health care, because Medicaid, which is an insurance policy for the more vulnerable and poorer people in our country, especially in the deep rural areas of America, many of them will now lose their coverage. It has been estimated as in the millions who will now lose their health insurance. Secondarily, the bill that was signed would ensure that the tax cuts that Trump had given in this first term would now become permanent. And so, as I described it then, when it was done in in his first administration, I now describe it as a big tax heist for the richest people in this country. So you have taken away Medicaid, you have taken away from the SNAP program, which is a supplementary nutrition program for the poor people, who you give them a certain amount of money each month so that they can buy basic, as it turns out, food stuff. It's not that they're going to indulge in any luxurious lifestyle, buying all kinds of steak and all that sort of thing. It's a basic food stuff for the poor people. It was a kind of safety net to kind of help them so that they would not descend into barbarity and into poverty, into deeper poverty in which they found themselves. But all of a sudden, this has been pulled out from under them. And there are many people who are going to suffer as a result of this. There are many children who depended on this program, and many households that are going to become poorer because they need this safety net. And you have gutted Medicaid, and you have gutted the SNAP program, and other aspects of the bill that will put poor people at a disadvantage. To what end? To ensure that the cuts that you're giving to the richest people in this country would be maintained at least over a period of time, and that they would enjoy a benefit which, frankly, as far as I'm concerned, as I said again in the first iteration, they did not deserve. Because many of them in the top echelons of the economic structure of this country have not been paying their taxes, or at least paying a fair share of what they earn. I don't think the IRS even knows what they earn, much less to go out there and compute and so on. And they have put a lot of strictures on the IRS too, so that they cannot go after people like that to find out where they may be hiding money, and whether they have been even filing their taxes. It's going to be a boondoggle. But the interest is not to promote the interests of the poor people. But as it is turning out, and don't tell me that they didn't know that this was the case, because there have been analysts and many people have been talking about these things. But when you're wedded to an ideology, you ignore the veracity of what other people are saying because you want to push through your program. And that is what happened in the House. It happened in the House, in the lower chamber of the House, and then it happened in the Senate. And at the end of the day, the people who get shafted are the poorest people in the country. I made no mistake about it, friends. When you got Medicaid and you got the SNAP program and so on, and you increase the lines at the pantries throughout the country, already many of those are coming under severe strain. The number of people who are now coming because they're going to be losing their benefits, or the monies are not flowing as they ought to. When all of these things happen, it affects all of us. Because when people get sick in the deep rural areas, many of them will die before they can even get to any of the major hospitals for help, because they have to drive miles upon miles in order to get this help. By the time you get an ambulance out there, people are dead. But for those who can make it to these hospitals, they're going to put a lot of strain on these hospitals, because people have to be attended to if they're ill and they come to your hospital. So costs are going to increase for everybody. And we are all going to feel it. So all this disingenuousness on the part of the Republican Party in pushing through this bill, even knowing the harm that it would do. Even some of those who, had a problem with the Medicaid, getting the Medicaid, because they know what it would be for their own constituents. People like Josh Hawley, for example, in the Senate. They went and still voted for this big ugly bill. Ted Cruz did it. A lot of these younger men and women inside the Congress who should know better bent their backs, gave up their any intellectual integrity that they had in service to a president and to a process and to an ideology that would heap a lot of hurt on people. And as for the Speaker of the House, presenting this kind of Christian persona, I want to know where in the Bible, and I want to ask him to read, I think, Matthew 25, where Jesus said, I was hungry and you gave me no food. I was thirsty and you gave me no drink. I was in prison and you did not visit me. And when the question is asked, when did I not do these things? Insofar as you do it not to one of these poor, vulnerable people, you didn't do it to me. Sometimes I don't want to question a man's faith, but you can question and critique when that faith does not align. The biblical principles that you expound do not align with the things that you practice. Because I don't see how you can be a Christian, and many of them who voted again, for this bill, knowing what they were doing to poor people. I can't say that you can believe in the Lord Jesus Christ, who has an option for the poor and who loves the poor, and tell me that you were doing something which was so injurious to their interests and have it pass as a boy, I'm a Christian. And if you're a Christian, then, then I with all of that kind of behavior, then I have to really question my own Christianity then. That believes in lifting up the poor and the oppressed, as Jesus said in Luke 4, that he has come to liberate. What is the poor and the oppressed? To give comfort to those who are in need. And what this big ugly bill has done is the uglification, the further uglification, if I should use that word, of the lives of the poor people of this country. And there is more to come. And I could go on, but I'm going to break off from that section because I want to get to a second reason why I could not celebrate this 249th anniversary in the way that I would have done it in the past. I don't know, friends, if you have seen the level of toxicity that is in the country. I have no doubt that we're living in a toxic America. There is a kind of situation in which hatred, anger at each other is becoming too much of a way of life. Take the matter of the Republicans on the Hill, the Republicans and the Democrats. I have never in my lifetime, and I've lived long enough, I know that Congress is a place for rancor and you put your ideas and people shoot it down and you have a go at it. And that is acceptable in any democracy. Democracy is a very dirty thing, you know. Don't think you're gonna just come out with any kind of clean linen all the time. You're gonna get muddied and hopefully not bloodied, but it can be very messy. Let me put it that way. And so you expect contending views. That is healthy for any democracy. But what I've seen emerging in the Congress in recent times is a kind of division, a kind of bellicosity. People being inside there, you're talking about 435 in the House of Representatives and 100 senators. So you're talking about 535 people who come to you during election time and tell you to put me there, give me the job there, and I will do things on your behalf. And yet, when they go there, there's a kind of division among them. The people's interests get pushed to the curb, and an ideology takes over. So they become very rigid in their ideological positions. So if I'm a Republican, I stay rigid in this position. Or if I'm a Democrat, I stay rigid in mine. And in the present situation there, this division has grown and the low shouting has grown, the bellicosity has grown. And what gets lost in all of this is any intelligent or cogent discussion of the people's business. I don't know if you've seen it, friends. And if this doesn't bother you, then you might be living under a rock. Because they're not getting anything done. The Republicans would never listen to what the Democrats are saying, neither the Democrats, the Republicans. This kind of bipartisanship thing that people talk about is not there. So in Washington has become a kind of toxic, putrid swamp. Politicians go there. I remember Trump saying he's going there to drain the swamp. if what obtains here right now is the draining of the swamp, then he's a very poor engineer, which I think he is anyway, a very poor one. Everybody goes, oh, we're going to change things. And when they get there, this is what you get. So we have a very putrid environment there, a toxic environment. Add to that toxicity the recent behavior of the Department of Government Efficiency, so-called government efficiency, DOGE. The number of people who have lost their jobs like that. What is happening at the the health department? What is happening in so many of the departments, the decimation, almost decimation of the education department. There is anger. There is the whole thing has become palpable. You could hold it. You could slice it like butter. So you tell me now on the 4th of July I must celebrate that. I see no committee, no friendship, no attempt at coming together on behalf of the country's interest. And I must jump up and say, oh, all is well. But that's just one aspect of it. I'm talking about Congress. No, what about the executive? I'm not talking about the three branches of the government now. The toxicity in the Congress. Now the toxicity in Trump's cabinet, the executive branch. And get some water here, friends. I need it. Tell you drink your water. It makes sense. Whenever I go around, I drive with one of these in the vehicle and pull up at this stop, it just automatically, my hand just go there and boom, take a little sip. Makes sense. You need to keep yourself hydrated. I can't stress that enough. Too many people end up in the hospital almost on a deathbed because they're not doing that. All right, so that is toxicity in the Congress. What about toxicity in Trump's cabinet, the executive branch? I don't think I need to go too deep into this because it is so obvious. It is the worst cabinet, certainly in my memory. And if you look back through history, it is the worst cabinet that this country has ever had, in my view. Certainly in recent times. The Senate, in bending to the will of the president, endorsed some of the worst elements to lead in the various departments and in various capacities in the government. There was a loyalty test that was established. Your loyalty and fealty to the president. And the president hasn't proven himself to be any improvement on what the first term was. If anything, so far, he's proving himself to be at a worse and a more negative situation and position than he was in the first term so far. And I think it can only get worse. But I wonder, with all this kind of what I call a motley crowd inside the cabinet, what is the level of the relationship among them? Committee working through, policies and coming up with decisions. Certainly, and you can bet, you don't have to be the fly on the wall to know that anything that emerges has to have the imprimatur of the president because he's the king who is in charge. And he's not going to brook any kind of criticisms of what he's doing. As a matter of fact, I suspect that people would be very afraid to want to contest him and to say, Mr. President, I don't think that A, B, C, D, E are right and that we should move in another direction. Now, that happened in the first administration, and his first cabinet was a very good cabinet. Well, I don't say very good, but was a more sensible cabinet, maybe put it that way, than we have now. The present iteration is, let me temper my let me temper my description and just say is demonstrably a poor set in terms of governance. And yet they're exercising this time around more than any other time. They have the greatest opportunity because of the power that has been given to the executive. There was talk probably about 5-6 years ago about the imperial presidency. Now that imperial presidency is in your face. That imperial presidency is rolling along even as I speak. And there does not seem to be any attempt to put a break to it, which brings me to the third branch of the government, which is the judiciary, and especially the Supreme Court that sits at the top of the judiciary. I don't know about you, friends, but when I look at the Supreme Court, can you remember in your lifetime, those of you who are even let me say 40 and over, or 30 and over, can you remember in your lifetime a time when when we have such a problematic Supreme Court? And problematic not because they disagree with each other as the most. Again, this is a democracy and views must contend and viewpoints, analyzed and critiqued. So there's nothing wrong with that. But you get again this sense of a kind of toxic relationship among them. The three democratically appointed ones. Justice Sotomayor, Ketanji Brown, and Justice Kagan. Three women who are there battling against the odds, swimming in this toxic pool against the six Republican appointed, three of them appointed by Trump himself. You don't get the impression that there is any kind of committee or a kind of, I'm not saying that they're going to be friendly, instead of, like putting your arms around each other and being friends, but you don't get the sense that there is a kind of respect of one side for the other, a kind of respect that could, even if you have disagreements, you could at least come down on the side of a position that will help the people of this country. But what you see is a standoff, 6-3 standoff. Sometimes, Roberts gets religion and he will come with these three, and along with Coney Barrett, she too may come, and then you have 4. That has happened. But by and large, especially in recent times, it is a 6-3 divide. With all the bellicosity that is there, you look at the positions that are taken by the dissenters, the Democratic dissenters, and you can feel the kind of animus that permeates the atmosphere there. Toxicity. And you tell me that on the 4th of July, I must jump up and say, hooray. I'm not saying that I have not been hypocritical in my life. Of course I have been. But I try very hard not to be hypocritical in the way that I think and commend myself, especially to the public. Now, I'm not going to be a hypocrite here and say that all is well with America when I look at the three leading, at the three branches of the government, and I see the level of the toxicity that is in them. This disengagement that is taking place between their ideology and what the interests of the American people are. And one must go along with that. So we are at a very serious inflection point in the country. And I don't think a lot of people see the danger that the country is in, and they're not listening to the people who can help them to see the danger still. Americans tend to be very distracted. We are built on faddism. We go for the new fad and we get distracted. But if there's ever a time when Americans need to be engaged, it is now. The midterms are coming. But don't take those midterms for granted. Don't take it for granted that those midterms cannot be rigged in a certain direction. And I say to the Democrats, you need to keep your eyes on the FEC, the Federal Electoral Commission, and what is happening there, or what might be happening there. Because as I keep saying, friends, yes, you're my friends, I am not so much worried about what I hear, because what I hear, I hear. You know what I'm worried about? What I am not hearing. What could be going on behind the scenes that is putting this country in worse danger than you and I could ever imagine. That is my prophetic imagination telling me that. And so I believe the country will survive. I believe the country as a whole is certainly greater than its, assumed parts. One of the things I've said is that America is a very malleable society. It's very resilient and malleable, can be beaten out. And I think perhaps we have to go through what we're going through. And perhaps in a very weird way. One might have to be even grateful to Trump in this regard that he has shaken up things, even though he's doing it in the way that he's doing it. But he's opened up people's eyes to see the things that we had taken for granted for too long. And when you see them playing out before you, such as the rabid, deportation of people and their rabid stance on immigration that is causing a lot of problems now in the agricultural sector, in the hospitality sector, where they cannot get workers to come in and work because you've shipped them abroad. The kind of brutality and the cruelty that is being meted out to people on a daily basis in order to enforce a point in people's minds that you're being tough. Yes, despite all of that, I believe the country will survive it. So I'm not here as a prophet of doom. But I tell you that prophecy is not about foretelling the future. It is about forthtelling, telling what is, reading the signs of the times and helping people to understand what is happening so that when it does happen, you will know that the Babylonians who were at the gate for too long are going to invade. So yes, July 4th went and 2026 will roll around. The question is, where will we be as a country? Where can we be as a country that cares for the poor and the oppressed and the vulnerable among us, the sick who we treat with a sense of respect instead of anger and bellicosity? What kind of country do we want? It's not for a few to do it. It is not even for the Democrats all by themselves, and they are another set that need to be critiqued because too many of them think that they can just ride in on the misfortune of the GOP and they fall in their poll numbers and they can just now, as it were, just sit under the mango tree and pick up mangoes. It doesn't work like that. They still need to come with a definitive position on subjects that they believe in and ingratiate themselves to the people and help people to understand where they are. People are not fools. Those who are well engaged are not fools. But I believe that the country, which is very malleable, as I say, can be beaten out, it's resilient, will survive even the worst depredations of the Trump administration. At least that's my belief and that's my hope. All right. Well, let me thank you for sitting it out with me in this episode. And let me hope that whatever your dreams are, don't allow fear of the moment to prevent you from dreaming. Dream big. Because one thing is that these things too shall pass. We may have to go through a certain amount of pain and agony before they pass. But one thing you can rest assured, time rolls on and change is the only constant. So thank you for sharing with me and let me wish you all the very best as you battle the rest of the summer. August is going to be hot too. It might not be as hot as July, but it's going to be hot too. And let me wish you all the very best. And that in all that you do, whatever you do, walk good. Bye-bye for now.